Hello, great YouTubers. Welcome back. In this part, we will look at programming a shared data block in step 7. Let's get started. To do this, we will move to our main screen and then start step 7. So we have step 7 and then we have our getting started program already open. Okay, so we will move to blocks and then from here we can create our shared DB. Now, what is a shared DB? Shared DB is basically a data block that can store a general data within your program. So one shared DB help you to manage your memory. So if you're having a PLC where you don't have enough memory, you can create one shared DB and then assign almost all your variables or assign data to this particular DB to save memory location instead of creating several DBs. Another importance of a shared DB is that it's general to every part of your program, so you can access it in every part within your program. Okay, so to create a shared DB, you will right click in the schematic manager and go to insert new object, and then we have data block. So you select data block, and automatically by default your data block is always a shared data block. So when we drop here, you can see that we have instance data block. And remember when we're creating an FB, we're using instance data block, but this time we are using a shared data block. Okay, so we can give it a name. So we say it's first underscore shared underscore data block. Okay, so you can give it a comment. So this is our first data block, and then I can click on OK to create it. All right, so we can see that our data block is created. We can double click on it to see how it looks like, how the structure looks like. Okay, so we can see that within the data block you can have your address. This is where your data is addressed so that you can be able to reference to this particular data in your program. You have the name column where you put the names. You have the type, that is going to be the data type. You have the initial values, and then we have comment. So we will create some data types right here, and then we will use that as an example. Okay, so in the first location we will create a boolean data type. So we can say maybe pump underscore, let's say feedback, FB feedback. So this is a boolean data block, so I can change here to, sorry, it's a boolean data type, so I can change here to boo, and then I can say give it a comment, pump, then you can enter. So automatically this one gives it a specific address. Is 0.0, so which means the DB is DB3 and then the data offset is 0.0. So 0.0 is my pump feedback. I can go ahead and create another one. I'll say pump. So we can say pump run. It's also going to be boo 0, and then this is going to be a pump status. So you can see that immediately automatically assigns the addresses for you. So we have 0.0, 0.1, 0.2. So it continues to we exhaust all the 0 up to 8 bytes, because remember Siemens PLC is always addressed in 8 bits, which is octa. All right, so from here I can also create another data type. So let's say, for instance, if I want the pump, let's say pump counter, so I will say pump counter, and I want this one to be an integer, so it's going to be data type int, which is going to be 0, and then I can give the description pump. Okay, so immediately it realized that you've made use pump, it's an integer, so it moves to 2.0, and then it's integer. Remember, integers are always 2 bytes long. So if I create another one, let's say I'll create another data type which is going to be a float. So let's say pump current, so So I will say pump current. So I pump underscore I rel data type and then 0.0. Remember, for rel the initial will be 0.0 because rel are floating points. And then this I will say pump current. Okay, so look at the addressing system. Immediately the system knows that here is an integer. It knows it will occupy 2 bytes, so 2.2 and then 3, and then immediately I specify the rel. It knows that you've made use of byte 2 and byte 3, so it moves automatically to byte 4. And then a rel also is 4 bytes long, so it will occupy 4, 5, 6, 7. So your next is going to be 8. Okay, so basically this is how you structure or put your data information into the shared DB. So now you can save, and because we'll be using the simulator, I can close this and then open the simulator. Okay, so with the simulator open, I can go back and say download. Okay, so now we've created a simple data. It can move, this data can move on and on and on and on, but for now we have this few data in this particular shared DB. So I can close the shared DB, and because I've reopened the PLC, let me re-download all the programming through. I need to do this because I closed the simulator and I have to open it again. Go to download. Let's say download all. Yes to all. Okay, so all downloaded. I'll put my CPU into run mode. It's in run mode now. So I'll go back to the block and we can see that our shared DB that we created is right here that we can see. And then let me double click. Now that the DB is in the PLC, we can monitor this particular DB. So I can go online also here and I say yes, I want to monitor, and we can see the actual value. So immediately we start writing data into this particular shared DB, we should be able to monitor those data in this particular actual value column. So let's take a typical example so that you understand the concept or get the concept very well. Okay, so to do this, I go back and then open OB1, try and send some data into OB1. Okay, so I create a new network, Control R, and say I want to move an information into this particular DB. So I will use the move command for the test. For the first one, let's move a bit because we've created some bits in there. To do this, let's say I want to move a bit. So I'll put a normally open contact right here, and then I'll put a call here. Okay, so this is how you go about it. So what do you want to do? I want whenever an input comes on a specific input, I should get this information into my DB. So I can assign this one to, let's say, input 2.7. Sorry, I 2.7. Okay, so whenever I 2.7 comes on, I want to write something, this information into the DB. So I have to give the DB address to this particular coil. Okay, so let's look at how we do this. Remember, our DB is DB3, so you say DB3 dot. Now because it's a bool, you say DBX, and then you look at the offset. Remember, our pump feedback was 0.0, so DBX 0.0. Okay, and click enter, and then we can see automatically it's able to fetch it. And this is our first FB, which is our first DB, which is a shared DB, and then is the pump FB, the pump feedback. Okay, so whenever this input is on, we want to see that we write data into this particular DB that we've created. this particular slot that we've created into the DB. Okay, so I can download, I can click save, and then I say download. Okay, so I can come online here, and we see that apparently currently we are not writing anything to the DB. So now let me go offline here and then go back to my DB and go online on the DB. So I will save, download, and then I'll say monitor. Say okay. So we can see that there is no value at, it's at false because we are not writing anything. So I'll go back to the simulator and then look for, so I'll change, I have my input 2 here. So if I click on 2.7, because in OB1 we are saying that whenever 2.7 is activated, we should write logic 1 into this particular memory location. So let's see that. So I'm back here, and then when I bring the simulator and I click on 2.7, you can see that immediately move to true, which means we've been able to write this information into this particular DB. And when I switch to OB1 and I go online on OB1, you can see that the output is energized. Perfect. So this is how you write Boolean information into this particular DB, or let's say bits information. Now let's look at how we will write integers into this particular DB. Okay, so I will insert a new network. Then I will use a move command for test purpose. Double click, and I say I want to move the value 30 into the position of the DB, this position of the DB. So let me go back to the DB. I want to move it into pump count. So if let's say the pump running counter is at 30, I should see this value 30 right here. So what's the address? It's DB3, and then the address is 2, address 2. Because it's an integer, it's address 2, not 2.0, address 2. So I'll switch back to the OB1. So I'll put the address where I want to send the information. Okay, so we have the 30 here, and then we put the address here. So it's going to be our db3 dot dbw. This is an integer, so it's a word. So dbw2, the offset is 2, and I say enter. Okay, so immediately you see that it's able to grab our pump counter, and then we can see that we'll be able to write into this particular position of the shared DB. So let me download, save, download. Okay, so now let's go into a DB and see whether we have the 30 sent into this particular DB. So I'll go online, to monitor, and then we can see that this 30 is written into this particular point of the DB. Okay, so basically that's how you assign an integer. We'll move on and then look at how we will write a rel or a float point into this particular DB location. Okay, so I'll enter, set a new network. For test purpose, I will make use of the move command again. And now I want to send the value 60. But remember, because it's a floating point, I can't say only 60. So it's 60.0. Okay. And then here I will say db3. Remember, it's our db3 dot dbd, because it's a double word. So db double, and then the offset is 4. When I enter, you see that it's able to grab it. Okay, so I can save. Now this one we are writing 16 to it. Let's see whether we can see the 60 there. I download, and then when I go to Windows and then go to the DB, if I go online, I should be able to see this data in mine. And then voila, we can see that we have 60 written into our. So we can see that we've been able to create a shared DB, which is DB3. We name it as our first shared DB. And then from there, we've been able to assign parameters into this particular DB. So when we double click on it, we've been able to assign parameters into this BB, and then we've been able to write information into this particular DB. We can also read information from the DB. So let's say, for instance, if I want to read information from the DB, I'll go back again. So this one, while I was writing, I will insert a new network, and then I will use the move command again to test that. Okay, or let me just delete this one and use this very one. Okay, so in this, I was writing an information into the DB. In the other point, I will read the information from the DB. Okay, so I will insert a new network and then bring the move command to write or read information from the DB. So I'll double click, select, double click. Okay, so we can see that this time every DB that you create is read write. You can either write into it or read from it. So if I'm reading from this particular point of the DB, then I have to give the address to the input side of my block. So it's going to be my db3.dbd4, enter. Okay, so which means I'm reading this signal and I have to write it somewhere else. So let me say I want to write it into a temporal variable. So I'll just create a simple temporal variable right here. Call it maybe db underscore data. Then I have to choose the particular data type that I'm reading, which is this is a rel. So I have to choose a rel for my data type, and then that is that. So I can click on this one. This is just a local variable that I've just created, and then paste it here. Okay, so I'll be reading from the DB into this particular local variable. So let's see. I click on save, and then I click on download. And then if I go online, you can see that I've been able to read the data. The data was 60 here. So let me change the view so that we can see what exactly is happening. So presentation, and I say I want float point. Okay, so we can see that we're writing 60 into this particular DB location, and I've been able to fetch this particular information from the DB and also write it to another point within my PLC. So basically, this is how you can read. Let's look at how we can read a byte as well. So I'll set a new network. Okay, so I'll put a normally open contact, and then I'm reading the information from this particular section of the DB. So I say db3.dbx because I'm reading a bool, dbx 0.0. So I'm reading the data from there, and then I can now write this data to somewhere within my program. So I create this. I can also create a temp variable, a local variable that I'll read this information into. So let me say I create a temp local variable called test, and it has to be a boolean. So it's a boolean. So I can now copy this and paste it here. Okay, so with this one we can see that we are reading the byte from the DB, and then we are writing into another point within our program. So I save, and I say download. Voila, so you can see that I can read the logic 1 from the DB and then write it to another point. So let me turn it off and see whether it will go off. Okay, so it was 2.7. If I turn it off, that signal leaves the DB, and we can see that now we are not reading anything, writing anything to this particular memory position. Okay, so we've been able to implement a shared DB, and we've looked at some specific examples of how to use this shared DB. Viewers, this brings us to the end of our 11th part. See you in the next tutorial. Kindly subscribe and also like, and also leave comments below to help me improve on this tutorial series. Thank you. See you in the next video. Bye bye.